what we're going to do tonight is really talk about getting your financial world in order, kind of going through the different documents that you have in your life and getting them organized. Really, it's the foundation of getting started, to get started on investing or saving or anything, putting your taxes together, anything like that. So what we'll start with is really at the foundation. The first thing I'll talk about, and it's really the process that I've developed over the last several years. I've probably looked at hundreds, if not thousands, of personal financial profiles over the years, and I've tried to whittle this down into a system that really works well for myself and for people that I advise over the years. The first thing I would suggest is getting together a place to store all this information. You'll see as we go through this, it gets pretty comprehensive. So you can go anywhere from having a 2 to 4 drawer filing cabinet. And if that's too much, you can always have a couple drawers in your kitchen or even a banker's box in your basement or your garage. I would also suggest, for a lot of things we'll talk about, they're sensitive items. So a good place to put them is a safe in your home, or of course a Rockwood Bank safe deposit box. So the first thing we'll talk about, and you'll see as we go through, that everything's kind of organized in file folders. And this is the way that I organize my personal finances. And I just section everything off in a way that makes sense to me, and a way that makes sense to the people that I've dealt with over the years. The first file folder that I put together is for income statements. And for the purposes of this discussion, we're not going to talk about any kind of business income, because business income can get pretty complicated. There's a lot of different strategies and different things that you can do to make that more efficient, and I'm glad to talk about that with anybody else if you want to set up another time to do that. But for tonight, we'll just talk about really W-2 income, people that get a check on a regular basis. So what we're talking about there is really your gross pay, the different items you're going to get in there, taxes, insurance. My wife and I have a health savings account that comes out of the gross pay, as well as our 401k items, which really encompasses all the things that we account for on our income. When we get into our expense structure, you'll see I've got these organized kind of in order of importance to me. I think health insurance is the most important thing, because I think you have to take care of yourself first, and then you'll see we get into your home and other items, really the biggest expenses in your life. So the first thing I'll talk about is health insurance. Again, this is just where I itemize the different things that you get. I keep a copy of the annual enrollment forms and a copy of the policy. Many of you might know that most people access their insurance through their employer, and it's an annual policy, and it's an annual process that we go through. Here at the bank, we transfer insurance, sometimes annually, sometimes every few years, just to make sure that we're getting the best policy, because we all kind of collectively get our policy together. So it's a good place to keep all your statements and keep track of what's going on with whatever health-related issues you have. Some people have more than others. So the next item that I want to talk about is your mortgage information and your home information. I mean, really just the statements that come out as expenses. Here at the bank, we do a lot of portfolio loans that really don't escrow for different things, so it's not itemized out, or you don't get a full statement that shows your principal and interest and your taxes and insurance. So we have to remind a lot of our customers to make sure that you know when those taxes and insurance are due. But that's a good place really just to keep everything within that file. The next thing would be for any kind of insurance policies. Again, these are pretty basic. I mean, most everybody has a homeowner's or a hazard insurance policy along with your different vehicles. The personal articles policy is a policy that I personally have, which covers things like jewelry, just something that's a little bit additional beyond what's covered on your homeowners. Long-term care is something that is really much more relevant in today's day and age. I think a lot of people are looking into long-term care, and we'll actually have one of our seminars will be on healthcare reform in a few months, if you're interested in looking into a couple of options there. Identity theft is something that I mentioned from personal experience. LifeLock is the company that I use. I had my briefcase stolen out of my car about 2 years ago. And so the first recommendation there is to keep your car locked at night when you're staying at your in-laws' house. And the second thing is, you'll see as we go through this, a lot of this system developed as a part of losing all those items. It was tax season. I was getting ready to fill out my taxes, and I had all my information in my briefcase. So luckily I work at a bank where they tried to cash all the checks that I had also in there as well. But LifeLock is a great company to use if you're looking at that. I think I pay like $9 a month to cover that stuff. Storage is another thing. If you have sensitive items on your computer, if you have a large music list or photos, Carbonite's a terrific insurance company that will back up your data on your computer. Utilities are pretty self-explanatory. I mean, again, I just have a different file folder that I keep each one of my utility statements in. And the other thing I would recommend is I actually automate all of my bills. I have everything go, directly from my checking account to each one of the different service providers. I think that's a good way to not have to run a check register. I mean, I still keep the check register, but I just don't have to write the checks and pay the postage.
Brian, a good thing that's on there, like keeping your bills like that, is if you go to sell your home, like that happened with the kids, well then whoever's buying it, they want to know what's a yearly water bill, what's the yearly electric bill.
Absolutely.
Well, if you get that all in a folder, man, you can pull that out and show them, and they think, whoa,
Absolutely. Yep. And that's, as a part of this process we go through, you'll see this is really the first step in developing the different financial statements that you'll want to build whenever you're talking about working with an investment advisor or getting prepared for filing taxes or doing your own, however you want to do it. So the next thing I'll talk about is really the rest of your expenses. So anything from automotive to drugstore stuff, entertainment, groceries. I personally use a credit card to maintain all of our other expenses. Here we talk about there's a lot of people that use cash the old school way, and there's a lot of people that use our Rockwood Bank debit cards, which is also a good way to keep track of things. The reason that I use a credit card is because, and I go through Visa, there's a lot of different reward programs out there that you can get points, and if you're the type of person that pays it off every single month, you don't have to worry about any kind of high rates, which most credit cards have. And so we funnel all of our expenses through a Marriott card, and we get to use the Marriott points to go on vacations once or twice a year. So it's a really good way to get an additional reward if you're disciplined enough to pay it off each month. And they also do a really great job of itemizing all your expenses at the end of the year. I get a year-end statement from Visa that will really break everything down, just like you see there. It'll tell me what I spent on home improvement, restaurants, and bars and things like that. So if you're trying to go through a budget, or for what we talk about as a spending awareness exercise, and the reason we say that is because a budget sets you up for a mindset of scarcity, whereas a spending awareness exercise will put you into a mindset of abundance. That's an exercise that we go through really just to see where your money is going so that you can see where you want your energy to flow. So it's really, it gives you the rewards, it gives you the record keeping, and you get another level of protection. We have some great protection and a great relationship with Visa with our debit cards. They take care of a lot of fraudulent things that happen behind the scenes. We've got some of our operations folks here tonight that probably deal with some of the breaches and fraud. I mean, it's just something that it happens more and more in today's day and age. So when you can add levels of protection into your finances, that's always worthwhile. The next file folder that I have set up is for education expenses. I have small children, so we have to keep track of all of our daycare expenses. We actually run our daycare expenses through another account that allows us to take some advantages, tax advantages, for some of the education expenses. And Tuition, obviously, if you're paying tuition, it's a good place to keep track of. And student loans, my wife and I both have considerable student loans from graduate school, and it's something that we continue to keep track of. Auto loans, another thing that we split out. One of the things that I like to do on any kind of loan is break it out on principal and interest. To me, that's the difference between financing a car that you're going to own or leasing a car. Same thing between leasing and owning a home. Principal really is just what you're saving, the amount of money that you're putting towards owning that car, the amount of money you may get back if you sell that car. The same thing goes with a home. It's a different way of kind of thinking about savings, but it's a good way to compare and contrast other different types of savings instruments. So all the things that I talked about so far are really your income and expense items. What I do on a quarterly basis is I have everything in a spreadsheet, and I itemize out everything on a monthly basis so that I can see things in kind of in real time. And I go through and look at the various expenses and compare and contrast them to one another, see if things are off. You can really get a good idea of where your money is flowing, and then if something looks, off kilter. A good example is Ameren. My Ameren bill just shot up one month, and then it shot up comparably the next month, and I started analyzing the statements, and I said, "This, something's off here." When I called them and I said, "Hey, you're charging quite a bit more on what I'm paying," and I even looked at the ratio of what they were charging me, and they said, "Oh, well, the wonderful voters of Missouri had actually passed some legislation last year that said that we can charge higher rates during the summer season when more people use electric." So the next time you look between, I think it's maybe April to about September, double check your Ameren bill and see if it spiked a little bit on you. But it's just a good way to analyze the different things that you have on a monthly basis. So that's really what I use to put together income and expense statements. And you can whittle things down as far as you want. It depends on how much information you pull out of it. But the next things that we'll talk about are for balance sheet and putting together personal financial statements. The first thing I have is I break out all my checking and savings statements, really all your Rockwood Bank accounts, any CDs and checking and savings. I put on here transfer on death and payment on death. That's something that we preach whenever you sign up for your accounts. There are ways to write estate planning into your different products, and especially in the investment space, there's a lot of features on the different investments that you put out there to kind of plan the estate without going through the process of putting together a trust or will or any of those things. And I'll talk about that more in detail when we get to the estate planning section. But it's really important to look at the products that you have and make sure that if that is offered, that you either have it going to the person that you want it to or going to your trust, if that's something that you have. Another file folder we have is our real estate file folder, which is one of the more comprehensive packages we have. If you just went through a purchase or a refinance with Rockwood Bank, you'll have a lot of these items handy. I keep my most recent appraisal that I have on my house, or there's a lot of different. Zillow has an estimator that you can go out and just get a current valuation of what your home is worth. It's a good thing when you're doing an annual statement, just to see where you're at and to see how things are moving in the market. Closing statement is something that your tax person is going to want to see if you've just purchased or refinanced something. And I keep, legal descriptions. Again, it's just something that you're going to have if you're going through a title issue or anything along those lines. One thing that a lot of people forget about is whether they're part of a plan development and they have any kind of subdivision bylaws. You'll find out real quickly if you put up a fence or an obnoxious sign that people have some hold over you. We remind a lot of people as a part of the purchase process to make sure that they get a copy and that they've read them, because you can get some surprises. The other thing is with condo complexes, and condos are a little trickier. They're harder to finance because there's a lot more control over the individual units from the exterior organization. And it's important to really look into what's going on with the condo finances, and who's managing things. Because I used to live in a condo development, and it was a busy group. We had a lot of retirees there, and they had a lot of time on their hands, and so we had a flower committee and a pool committee and a what are we doing on Tuesday committee. And so they were busy, and they were watching everything. And I got the sense after going to one or two of the meetings that I was getting ready to pay for a lot of roofs, and so I put my place up for sale. But a survey is another thing to have in there. We always offer it as a part of the purchase process for people to get a survey. A survey is worthless until you need it. It's something that gives you the lines in your property, and if you don't think anything's to worry about, don't worry about getting one. But we've had a lot of issues with people having fences over their property, or sometimes even homes are on their property, and they have a legal obligation to do something about it. Sometimes you have to tear down a wall of your house, but luckily that doesn't happen too often. The other thing, when I was talking about my condo, is that we actually put in a finished basement into our condo, and it was at the time when the markets were going up and down, and we probably bought at the higher side and decided to sell at the lower side. But we put a bunch of money into our basement. Now, a lot of people don't realize, and I'm not an accountant, so I don't know the exact specifications, but everything that you put into your home that becomes a fixture becomes a part of your cost basis. So if you're adding a bunch of stuff into your home, it's very important that you keep accurate records and receipts and everything. I have a spreadsheet based on what I bought my condo for, and then how much we spent on our condo. So there was a considerable amount more that went into it than what we got for it. Now, the cost basis will actually apply not to the home that I just bought, but to the home after that. So it's an accounting configuration, and I don't know it specifically, but it's good to keep track of that stuff, just so you know. With vehicles, vehicles are something we all use, and we all have to maintain. We all have to get retitled, it seems like all the time. And just I have a file folder that keeps a copy of my title, because it just depends on the type of person you are, but some people don't have a clue where the titles are. We do a lot of auto loans for folks, and we're getting new titles on them because they don't have a clue where they're at. But it's just a good place to put a copy of your title, keep track of license plate numbers, things like that. I keep all that stuff handy so that I can access it whenever we're filling out forms. I actually have a description of my car within this folder because I work at a bank, and they want to know what kind of cars we drive, because if somebody ends up robbing the bank, they want to know it wasn't our car. So the next section is for life insurance, and I mentioned before, but it's good to have a copy of policies just to maintain what's going on. There's a lot more specifics that go on the different types of life insurance policies, but it's good to have it handy, especially when you have annual payments that go into your life insurance. But I also say on here copies of the policies, because you should have all the originals in a safe in your home or a Rockwood Bank safe deposit box. Life insurance policies, long-term care, like I said, it becomes more prevalent every day. Indemnity insurance is something that we have to have here at the bank, and being in the financial services industry. It's really errors and omissions, basically, if somebody decides to sue you because they don't like what you did with their money. Retirement options. There's a million different types of retirement accounts, and it's just about whittling down what you want to do with your money. I put on here basically the standard options. IRAs, that's something that we offer here in the Roth or traditional form. Roth and traditional really just means when are you going to pay taxes on your money. If you pay taxes now, you put it in a Roth, it'll grow tax-free, and when you take it out, you don't pay any more taxes. Traditional, you're going to go ahead and put all that money in, take a deduction on your income, and then you're going to pay taxes on it whenever you remove it out of there. The Roth has a lot of freedom to it. It's a great instrument to get into when you're young. Really, it's a great instrument anytime. But the traditional one has a little parameters on it. You can't access it without any penalties until you're 59 and a half. Well, you can't access either one of them until you're 59 and a half, but and you have to have it out. You have to start taking things out by the time you're 70 and a half. The other type plans, 403Bs, SEP plans, and profit sharing are all just different types. It just depends on where you're working, whether you're working in a public space or for a school district or something along those lines. I always put Social Security statements in savings because it is a form of savings. A lot of people put it under the umbrella of entitlements, but and it comes under and it comes out of your paycheck, above the net income portion. But as far as I'm concerned, if you're putting the money in, you should get it back someday. Now, some of the youngsters might not be getting any Social Security back, but hopefully most people in this room will be getting some of those payments. And if you're curious about how Social Security works, we're going to be having a seminar in 2 months about Social Security. So I encourage you guys to come to that. The next file folder I have is stock, and that really depends on the type of trader that you are. If you're a day trader or you're getting stocks, buying and selling on a weekly basis, you're going to have a huge file folder, and you're going to have one of the 4 drawer cabinets instead of one of the 2. But it's very imperative that you keep track of all the different trades, especially if you do your own taxes. But my guess is that if you're an active trader, you're probably having somebody else take care of your taxes. But again, it's just a good place to keep everything together. A health savings account is something I don't know if I mentioned that before, that's something that my wife and I have. Health savings is an excellent thing to have for healthcare expenses. It's a tax-efficient vehicle that basically says as long as you make your expenses towards this many items, then we're not going to tax you on it, or we're going to take it off of your income. So it's a great thing to use for healthcare expenses, or at least for a portion of them. And ours is set up through my wife's employer, but there are a lot of places that offer them if you set them up on your own. And the key to that is to make sure that you have, again, another place to put stuff, receipts. Because if I go to Walgreens and I spend $60 at Walgreens, and $25 or $30 of it was my prescription, well, the rest of it might not be covered by law under your health savings plan. So it's very imperative that you keep track of all those things. Children's assets. I have little kids, so we're starting to, get some things for them. For a long time, we would sell savings bonds here at the bank, but the structure and the technology has moved to the point where I think you get them directly through the government. But I know it was a popular item for a lot of years to buy for young kids to hold because of the long maturities. Bonds aren't probably the best place to put your money right now. Life insurance, another good thing to get in children's for children's assets, and we do CDs and stock. And there's other things like educational savings accounts, Coverdell plans, or the other types of things like that. Other assets really comes down to everything else you have that's not covered under a type of product or an easy buy line. My suggestion, if you really want to get detailed about everything, is to go into every room in your house and make a list of what's in it. And it sounds very detailed, it sounds over the top, until your house burns down, which is something that has happened to me. So what's funny is that when you lose everything you've got, it's really important to have some documentation of what you had, because if you don't have a total loss, the insurance company is going to come to you and say, list all your stuff. And so if you have that list ready to go, you may not think it will happen. I never thought it would happen. But when it does, that's a useful item to have. And it has some side benefits. When you start going through all your stuff, you start looking at all the stuff you want to replace as well. So that's kind of a fun process. And again, this is another place that for me, I keep receipts for big items, for things that might have a warranty or something that I want to replace, or insurance. I did forget to mention that on insurance, whenever you're insuring things, it's important to think about the cost benefits of whether you want to insure it or not. There's a lot of things out there, TVs, dishwashers, things that are $400 or $500, iPhones, things like that you think, oh, hey, how about another $15 to insure that? Okay. If you think, so my father's economics professor in college told him a rule of thumb. He said, if you can afford to replace it, if you have money that you can access somewhere else to replace it, don't ever insure it. And in the long run, you will win out. Now, if you're just an extremely unlucky person, I'm sure you could end up on the wrong side of that. But if you're wanting to self-insure against that, the rule of thumb is to take every single time that somebody offers you an insurance on any item, $15 here, $20 here, you take that money and you set it aside into another account. And anytime something breaks, you've got your self-insurance ready to go. So that's just another little tip. Taxes, my favorite time of year. I think everybody loves paying taxes. The reason I originally said that you might want a 2 to 4 drawer cabinet is because you're really supposed to keep 7 years of tax returns on file. Not only just 7 years of tax returns, but 7 years of proof of those tax returns. So really everything that we've talked about so far, you need all of that, 7 years worth. Because if the tax man comes and he wants you to prove something, he's going to need all that information. And within this file folder, I also keep things that I'm gonna need whenever I start preparing my taxes as well, which is going to be any kind of charitable contributions. If you're anywhere above the $500 kind of limit that they put on you, that they want you to start itemizing things, it's just a good idea to get into a habit of itemizing what you're giving away anyways. And if you have a list of all your personal property, you just transfer it from one list to the other. Personal property tax receipts and real estate tax receipts is another thing that I keep within this file folder. And tax vouchers, if they think you're going to come up short for the next year, it's a good place to keep it. Estate planning. So this won't be a comprehensive overview of estate planning. If you're interested in putting something together or something more specific to your situation, we will be having a estate planning seminar in September, so I encourage you to come to that. But the basic documentation that you want to have available is really a last will and testament. It's just the basics of, if you own anything, who do you want to have it? And if you have kids, who do you want to take care of them? I mean, that's really the basics of what it comes down to. A durable power of attorney is a document that basically allows someone to legally act as you if you're incapacitated. So make sure it's somebody that you trust. The healthcare declaration is instructions. So if you're the type of person that you don't want anybody to resuscitate, you've gotten to the point where just, you know what, if I go out, let me go. Then you can put instructions on there to do not resuscitate. If you've got some sketchy people in your family and you definitely do want them to resuscitate, you get that written down and share it with everybody, because you don't want them over there pulling plugs on you. So it's a good place to have that stuff written down and share it with as many people as you need to. Within this same kind of area, I keep birth certificates of my whole family. If you have young kids, you see that everybody wants a copy of the birth certificate, I guess, to prove that they're yours. And for me, I have cemetery plots because my family owns cemetery plots in one of the cemeteries in the crazy neighborhoods. And I actually have fingerprints because I had to get fingerprints as a part of getting my securities licenses. But I can't imagine you need fingerprints unless something really bad happens. Along those lines with estate planning is putting together a trust, and a good guideline for a trust is if you've got about $500,000 in assets or more, it's probably time to start thinking about how you want those allocated. The only other thing, if you have something that's complex within your asset portfolio and it needs some kind of instructions, if you've got, again, some sketchy people in your family and you want to make sure that things happen a certain way, that's when you start getting into putting together a trust, because a trust is like creating another person, and things have to happen based on how you put it together, based on your wishes. So again, we'll have an estate attorney here in September, so if that's something you're interested in, I'd definitely encourage you to come to that one. The next section is on really everything else. Here I kind of put, it's crazy to me to see how many online accounts and passwords that people have, and they've come up with different technologies to help you keep track of it. I just write them down and keep a printout of it. I keep a copy in my safe or a Rockwood Bank safe deposit box. I also keep a copy of my passport, and I've made a copy of all the things that I have in my wallet. It always cracks me up that there's a 1-800 number on the credit card that you have stolen. So it's a good thing to have a copy of all those things in case something does happen to that property. And then I keep a copy of my Social Security number. Again, I keep the originals in a safe, and I have a credit report from the last refinance I have, and I keep a copy of my marriage license just to remind me of how happy I am. So what this is the system that I've developed, over the last few years. It's just a simple way of putting things together. I get excited about filing things. It's not exciting, but it's extremely useful. I refer to this daily. I manage my own accounts. I have the luck of being at the bank, so I get to see everything going on as it happens. But I'm referring to something and accessing something within this filing system on a daily basis. If this is the way that I have it structured, you can see it's just on a worksheet that I have. And if you guys want a copy of this, please let me know and I can email you a copy of it. I like to look at it, and if you just turn it this way, that's how the file folders are all organized. So it's all kind of front to back and how you access it. That's exactly how I have it in my filing system. It's really the first step in getting organized and then moving on to the next step, which would be really itemizing what you want your money to do. This is an excellent thing to have at your disposal for your investment planner, for your tax planner, and for your banker. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you guys all for coming. Really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please let me know.